Hare Krishna. I recently received a question. Can you give some info about Vedic tuning using synths? So I'm going to try to explain this in a nutshell and show an example. Vedic tuning using synths is pretty much divided in three parts. One is to understand the 22 Shrutis and how we choose the 7 swaras from there, how we form a grama, and from the Gramas Tanas and Jatis are derived, and then Ragas, and then how to create a tuning file to load into software to make a song. So, the first part, the 22 Shrutis. This is crucial because Indian music is composed of 22 intervals within an octave, well, including the drone or sa, and Western music only has 12. So where do these notes go? Well, they're very close, but not in the same values of proportion or ratio as in the West. For example, we have the note, I'm going to compare, although it's not accurate, just for the sake of the presentation, Sa with C, and then C sharp or D flat would have two varieties, or two Shrutis, and then the note D would have two Shrutis also, and then like so, D sharp and E. So that means that for each of the 12 keys except Sa and Pa, that would be 10 keys, we have two varieties. So that would be 20 intervals, and Sa and Pa, that is 22. And that's how we have 22 Shrutis. In this chart I'm showing the ratios and the intervals. Here in this column we can see, for example, G or Pa is 1.5, or the ratio 3 divided by 2. This is the pure fifth. So from these 22 notes we choose the swaras that will be grouped together, and that is a grama. A grama is a group of swaras. Grama means village, or refers to that kind of environment. In India, village. In a village, it's a small group of people and they are interrelated very closely. So I will show you quickly. The gramas are arranged like this. There are 3 gramas, Sa grama, Ma grama, and the Ga grama. The Sa grama is composed of these Shrutis, number 1, 4, 6, 10, 14, 17, and 19, from that previous chart I showed you. And if one performs Murchana is called when we change the drone of each and make each of these 7 notes a drone, then we have the modes known in the West, or Murchanas in the Indian system, and this is considered a grama. So from gramas, Tanas are derived, and Tanas is very interesting because it shows variations of these 7 notes using pentatonic or hexatonic notes, only 6 or 5 notes. We sing according to the sacrifice that we want to perform in Vedic rituals. For example, Rajasuya sacrifices here. So we sing the notes of the Sagrama without the note Sa, for example. And here it is. This gets a little bit complicated, but it proceeds from Tanas, and then as Tanas combine with each other, they form Jatis. And all this knowledge is coming from Natya Shastra. It's explained in the section of music, instrumental music. And Bharata Muni in Natya Shastra explains that from the Jatis, everything, all music in the world is derived. Anything that's beautiful that you consider exquisite from this world, musically, it's derived from these Jatis. And from Jatis, some people say our Ragas are directly born, And some people say ragas are still further derivation of the jatis. So in this case, I'm going to show the example of the Sajia, Kaishiki, Jati. And it has these notes that I'm showing here. Sa, 2 varieties of Re, 2 varieties of Ga, Ma, Pa, Da, Ni. Okay? It gets quite elaborate because it even Bharata Muni, he even gives the emotions that you can produce with each of these jatis. So we have the 22 Shrutis, we choose 7 swaras to form the Gramas, and this choosing process is already defined in the scripture. It's not that I speculated it. And these Gramas are considered from divine origin. They're used for temple worship, the music of the demigods and all this stuff. So it's completely scientific in terms of, it's not just me thinking this might sound good. So once we have a certain tuning that we're aiming for, then we need to put the tuning or tell which notes we're going to use in our tuning software. The one I use is called Scala. And it's a Windows software, so I'm running it with a Windows emulator. And here it is. So in this Scala software, I can program my 12 notes and tell exactly which is the pitch that I want for each note. For example, here it's very clear that I want my Pa or G note to be 3 divided by 2 or 1.5, the ratio of the fundamental. And then the software will even let you play the notes. There's a little keyboard and you can pre-hear the notes. So once you have entered your scale like this, then you can just basically export the synth tuning, and then you choose, I chose .tun file because the particular synth I'm using for this example will have this tuning. And I just save it, and that's it. Okay. Software that I use all the time for working with ragas and singing, training and all this stuff is called Absynth. Very useful because you can enter the tuning directly here. So I'm going to show you this example, this Sajia Kaishiki Jati, and let you hear how it sounds. Other Shrutis are a little bit tense, which is appropriate because in music you don't want everything to be extremely, what's the word? Harmonious. Sometimes the harmony has to be a little bit bent because of the emotion that we want to present. So for example, we have Ma, Tivra, Ma. Have to experiment a lot and get to know a certain raga that you want to perform. You have to study Indian music a little bit. But for example, one raga I'm studying, it uses a re, ma, pa, da, sa, da, pa, ma, re, sa. So then you start to explore these things, especially for Western music. What I do is start playing with the swaras and see which chords will have a very wonderful sound. Let me show you. In this case, you can see the notes that I'm playing over here. If I play these notes, see a very nice clean chord. These other notes, very nice. And over here, that's a little bit more tense, but still in tune. So let's say I have these 3 chords, or they're not even full chords because they're using 2 notes. A certain particular raga will have a limited amount of chords according to the Western system, because the whole tuning thing is a whole different approach. But for example, I can play C major. So then you have to pretty much explore and start playing with these. That, for example, is a little bit out of tune. So not all chords will be playable according to the Western system, but that's okay because we don't use all chords in every song. According to the raga, the certain mood will be necessary. So now, once that I have a certain melody that I like, personally I work with the sine wave, very simple sound, until I get the harmony that I'm looking for. And then I go to the software synth to make it much more rich and punchy. So in this case, let's say I like this chord progression. Okay, these 3 chords. So now I'm going to go to my software logic, and here I have a very simple demo song using these 3 chords. So I have already worked on this, and this has a lot of reverbs and like that. It's those same 3 chords, but with effects and a little more polishing according to Western style. It sounds like this. Simple chord progression can start to transform into this wonderful song. In any style, it doesn't have to be Indian, but the principles are pure Vedic tuning. That is what makes a huge difference. If you get used to hearing these Shrutis, these swaras, you will be amazed the quality of the purity. When you hear or switch back to Western tuning that you're used to every day, oh, it's just such a horrible transition. It's almost painful, actually. I've been practicing singing also a lot lately, and when by mistake the tuning is left to equal temperament, oh, it even produces a headache. One gets used to pure sound. So this is not very nice, but that's the Western tuning, out of tune. Another very interesting experiment that I'm working on is to actually practice like Vaishnava songs and things like that with these principles. I find it very, very useful for voice training. Unfortunately, many or almost all singing teachers today that teach any kind of method for singing in the West, they're all using piano, and it's horrible because the poor singers, they try to sing beautifully, but they're training with the horrible notes. So how they're going to sing beautifully is such a struggle. We need to help these people out because they're like suffering. So when we practice singing, for example, let me show you with a simple sine sound again. For example, not simple, but common bhajan. Gai Gauramadur Sware, Gai Gauramadur Sware, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Gai Gauramadur Sware. So if you practice very consistently with a source of sound that's in tune, then you very easily achieve much more sweet, pure sound. I'm still warming up and I need to practice a lot of my singing, but I've noticed just by practicing with the proper tuning that it's so much easier to sing. It just feels more natural. So, just these notes, pa, ga, ma, pa. There's a whole series of exercises, which is great because as a composer, if you're using synths, you can create a whole song, and then if someone's going to sing your song, you can lay out the track in which you show the actual tuning that you want them to sing, and then let them hear that, and then play or sing the vocal with that tuning, train with that. It really, really helps a lot. And it helps a lot also once the vocal is recorded to see where there's tuning problem. You can compare with your sine wave. Okay, so that's it for now. I'm sure there's plenty of questions, but this is just an overview. So please post your questions in the forum, thevedicway.org, and we'll continue the discussion from there. I hope at least it was clear enough to get you motivated and inspired. This Vedic tuning is just so much superior to anything else in this world. And I believe this will start the revolution of bringing the world back to spiritual consciousness. If musicians start using pure Vedic tuning, or even pure tuning, even like just intonation, then people will get purified, because pure Shruti or swaras are spiritual sound. And this is key to begin the transformation into the golden age of Lord Chaitanya. Okay, thank you for listening. Hare Krishna.